Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley here at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me. Today I am sharing maybe one of my favorite cards I've ever created. It is this beautiful floral card. It has some gold foil accents, and I'm going to show you some simple no-line coloring here. Now, no-line coloring can be pretty intimidating, I'm not going to lie, especially if you really don't consider yourself an expert colorist. And I definitely do not consider myself an expert colorist. But I'm going to share this easy technique with you today and give you a few tips and tricks for creating a beautiful colored image in the end. Now I'm starting out with this floral stamp. This is from the Essentials by Ellen line. It's the You Should Know stamp set, and I'm inking it up in some antique distress ink. And you'll notice there that I actually stamped it off on a scrap piece of paper before stamping it onto my Neenah Solar White heavyweight cardstock. And that's because if I use this ink full strength, it was a little bit dark for me. Now I'm not gonna lie, this was a little light. I was having a hard time seeing it. So I inked it up again, stamped it off on some scrap paper, and then stamped it down in the same place again using my Misty stamping tool. And you can see I have this very light tan outline. Now I am using the Distress ink today, but there are no line coloring inks available from many manufacturers. I just happen to have this on hand and it works just fine for me. So now that I have my image stamped onto my cardstock, I'm going to start my coloring by laying down a base layer of color using Copic markers. Now I am literally just tracing the outline of these petals and filling it in with the marker. I am doing no shading at all. And by the way, I will have all the markers and the colored pencil colors that I am using over on my blog. So if you're looking for the specific colors that I used, I will have them linked over there or listed over there, and you can check those out. Now, there is something very forgiving about no line coloring in this, because if I do go out of the lines a little bit, you're not going to see it. So I'm just doing my best to trace around the outer edges of these petals and kind of fill them in with that base layer of marker. And you'll notice that this stamped image is actually very simple. There is not a lot of overlapping leaves and areas where things would need to be shaded or two of the same colors kind of on top of each other. This is kind of an open image, and that's something that may help you achieve more success in your no line coloring, is to pick a more simple line art image. Now there are beautiful intricate stamped images available, but it is not something that I would ever try to no line color because it's just not my comfort area. So you can see I have my image here, I have a base layer of color, and now I'm going to go in and start adding shading, because shading is really important when it comes to no line coloring. Now, I didn't feel like I could accomplish the look that I wanted with Copic markers. I don't consider myself an expert in Copic markers. So I grabbed some Polychromos colored pencils in colors that were similar to the base layer of the Copic marker that I used, and I am using those to do the shading. I find them to be a little more forgiving. And you can see I've done this first flower here, and you can see the depth and dimension that adds when comparing it to that other pale pink flower on the bottom. So I'm going to continue doing that. I am adding shading kind of towards the inner parts of the petal, towards the center of the flower, and a little bit around the edge of the petals. And that's all I'm doing. Now, if you really want to make your no line coloring stand out, you do need shading. And I want to tell you, don't be afraid to grab a colored pencil that's just a little bit darker and add some of that towards the center. You see me doing that there, and then kind of blending it out with that lighter colored pencil. You can really achieve a lot of control with colored pencils by just changing up the pressure that you're using. So if you want to create a deeper, darker shadow towards the center, you can add a little more pressure towards the center of the flower, or you can kind of lighten it up if you want less shading. So as I'm working on the center parts of these flowers, I'm kind of giving a little more pressure or a heavier hand. This is probably not the correct way to use colored pencils. But as I said before, I'm trying to create this in a simple way because this is what I'm comfortable with. And then as I work out, I'm kind of lightening up the pressure. Now I've completed all of the flowers here and added the shading, and you can see how that really makes them come to life. And now I'm going to work on the leaves, and I started with a dark green colored pencil to add some shading. And really, that was not giving me the depth that I needed. So I'm going to add some of this in here, but then I'm going to go into the deepest, darkest parts, and I'm going to add some black colored pencil to create some more shadow in the base of these leaves. And that really helps them come alive. So once I finished up my image, I was thrilled with it. I started with a simple stamped image with some light colored ink. I added a base layer of those Copic markers to give me my base color, and then I added my shading with those colored pencils. And like I said, don't be afraid to go just a little bit darker than you think to add some really nice deep dark areas in your coloring. And I think you're going to end up with an image that you're really happy with. Now, I love the way this coloring turned out. It felt very Rifle Paper Company to me. And so I wanted to add this beautiful mint green background. So I am taking my Copic marker. This is the G000 marker. And I am coloring the entire white background using this marker. Now you're going to see as I start out here, I'm taking it nice and slow as I go into these small areas. And as I work my way out, I can kind of do bigger, broader strokes. Now keep in mind, when you first lay down this Copic marker, it's going to look a little streaky. As it dries back, it's going to kind of even out a little bit. But there may be some areas that you want to add 2 layers of color to. And so you can go back over those areas that might look a little streaky, add another layer, and that's going to smooth out the entire look of this coloring around it. And you're going to see in the finished project, it doesn't look streaky at all, but as I'm laying it down here, it really does kind of look blotchy and streaky. Don't worry. I think that adding this colored background is really a fun technique and something to really just punch up your card a little bit. I've done it with navy markers in the past and some pink florals, and that's beautiful as well. Now, it was at this point that I was just like, I love this image. I really do. The simplicity of it, the colors, they're absolutely beautiful. I love the green background. And quite honestly, I don't always love the things I color. So I really felt like I had kind of gotten a little lucky and hit it out of the park on this one. So once I had that colored, I'm going to go ahead and die cut it. Now, I did create a second colored image, and I stamped it with the Gina K Obsidian Amalgam ink. So you can see the difference between the no line coloring here and the traditional stamped line coloring here on the right hand side. A little bit different look. They're both beautiful, but that no line coloring won my heart. And it really was easy when I broke it down into the little pieces by keeping the stamped image simple, laying down that base of Copic marker, and then going in with the colored pencils, which I feel like I have more control over than a Copic marker. Now, there are artists who do wonderful things with no line coloring and Copic markers, but this was really in my comfort zone. And so I encourage you to find a medium that's in your comfort zone. You don't always have to use a million colors of Copic markers to create shading. There are other ways to do it, and this is the way that I found worked best for me. Now, I really didn't know where I was going to go from here, but I thought it would be absolutely amazing to add some gold foiling to the stamped image. And this was an act of bravery on my part because I loved the way that this colored image turned out and I didn't want to ruin it. But I got brave and I decided to go ahead and try this. So I have this geometric floral frame. This is from Spellbinders. It is a hot foil stamp and I am going to use it to add foiling over this colored image. Yes, it's brave. You can see I created a hinge for this hot foil stamp or this hot foil plate using some delicate surface painter's tape. So I positioned it where I wanted it on my card front, and then I used that tape to kind of hinge it back, slide my foil underneath it, and keep in mind when you're using the foil, you always want the pretty side of the foil facing the design of the plate and the not pretty or the not shiny side touching your paper. Now, once I have that in place and my foil in place, I am going to bring in my Gemini foil press. I'm going to lay these with the plate backside down onto the hot foil platform. And I will have a video coming soon with some more detail about foiling, but in the meantime, you can check out this video. I'm going to pop it into the upper right-hand corner now. There is a video on how to use the Gemini foil press on my channel, so I'll link that for you. Now, I also used this Yana's Sentiments foil plate set to create a sentiment that says thank you on this ivory cardstock. And if you can't tell here, I am like super nervous to pull this off because I was like, did I just ruin this? And I pulled it off and I was like, oh my goodness, I love this so much. It was worth every risk I took to come out with this outcome. I love the way it turned out. So I used the coordinating die to die cut my foiled sentiment, and then I repeated the same process on this other piece that I colored. And I did get a little over foiling on this. I'm not sure what happened, but it wasn't enough that I was like, it's ruined. I just took a regular eraser and kind of rubbed away some of the excess, and I was totally happy with the results in the end. Now, in order to give some dimension to these very delicate foiled die cuts, I used the coordinating die to die cut some plain white cardstock 3 more times, and I'm using some liquid adhesive to stack these up. This is going to give it some dimension and give it a little more weight on the card so that it stands out a little bit more, because there is a lot going on this card. Not a lot as in overwhelming, but a lot that could kind of make this delicate sentiment kind of get swallowed up. So I wanted to make sure that it carried a little bit of weight on the card. So adding dimension to it was the way to go, in my opinion. And once I have these stacked up, I'm actually going to add some liquid adhesive on the back of it and adhere it to a vellum strip. Now, the vellum strip was a way to kind of make it stand out a little bit more on the card. And also, it allowed me to add some more dimension because I'm going to hide some foam adhesive behind the vellum strip as well, kind of just tucked behind that sentiment. So I have 2 of these going at once. You can see I'm working on both cards at the same time. And I'm going to trim this into a banner end. So I'm just cutting in the center of this strip, and then I'm going to cut from each corner to that center slit to create my banner end. And then I can adhere this onto my card front. Now, I want to mention, I originally die cut these card fronts using an essential rectangle die from the Essentials by Ellen line. And my framing was kind of off. There felt like there was too much space at the bottom. So I did go back and die cut these with a little bit smaller essential rectangle from the Essentials by Ellen line to kind of make up for that large area on the bottom that just felt empty. So I kind of framed it in a little bit more. And then I finished these card fronts off using some sparkling clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh. And I just added these using some foam adhesive to a top folding A2 linen card base. It is the Essentials by Ellen linen cardstock. When I am creating a really simple card, I love to finish it off with the linen card base. I think it adds a little bit of texture and like a luxurious feel to these simplistic, I guess they're not super simplistic, but these cards here. So there you have it, 2 cards featuring the You Should Know stamp set from the Essentials by Ellen line, some simple no-line coloring, which, by the way, you can use the same coloring technique on that lined image as well. So if you don't want to do the no-line coloring, you just stamp it in the black ink. You use those Copic markers and the colored pencils in the same way, and you get great results as well. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in these projects in the description at YouTube. But if you're looking for more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies, be sure you head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I will have that linked below. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, a complete list of supplies, as well as a list of the Polychromos colored pencil colors that I used. As always, thanks so much for stopping by and watching. I am so glad you're here. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on the notifications so you won't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. Thanks again for watching. I'm so glad you spent your time here with me today. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.